Good evening, everyone. How are we all today?
Doing well.
All right. So per usual, we're going to do quick introductions. I do have a couple of announcements for the chat, but I kind of want to let people have time to get in and get settled before I start doing paperworky things. And before we get to all the fun stuff. Um, so Nick, welcome. If you just like to tell us and tell the chat a little bit about yourself and
Yeah.
how you got into gaming.
How I got into gaming? That's a big question. Um, yeah, my name is Nick Barron. I do Breaker Press Games. I make some a variety of different content, but mostly what I've been doing the last several years is making content for Dungeon Crawl Classics as a third party author. And yeah, I got into gaming at a really young age. My mom originally taught me how to play Rummy, and then I played a bunch of board games, and then I got exposed to D&D at 8 years old with my cousins, and I ran my first session of D&D for my mom at 8 years old, and mercilessly murdered all of her PCs. So yeah, that's my start.
Interesting. I think I also started at 8, and I think you are the only other person I know that's gotten into it that young.
Yeah.
35 years later-ish. Pixel.
Hi. So my background is a little bit strange because I only started RPGs after college. So I grew up playing a ton of board games. When I was too young to play them, I was the banker. It was a very important job, and I'm pretty sure they did that so that I wouldn't mess up all the game pieces. And then after college, about exactly 1 year, a friend of ours brought the starter set, and he was like, "Let's play D&D." And that just opened the floodgate to someone like me who loves collecting different games for different personality types. I was like, "Oh, this tabletop RPG does this tabletop RPG." And so I've got a collection of dozens of games, each one for a different reason or for a different world setting. I think that's a problem. Some people in chat was like, I like what this does. Not all of it, but this one thing is really cool. So it's very easy to sell me on a tabletop concept. It's like, this one you play blindfolded. I go, oh, I'll grab that and never use it. And then since then, I've been working to make my own. I've made horrible games that were terribly balanced, and I've slowly gotten better at throwing my bad games in the garbage and improving the ones that have a bit of promise.
And I'm sure that no one else here has a game that they've bought and then never played.
No, the shelf of shame is not a real thing. It can't hurt you.
All right, Phil?
All right. Well, I'm Phil Sedge Benson. That CG is an Old English diphthong that was later replaced by DG and finally a J when the English language adopted that letter. But I'm going to have to throw my name in the hat for the young gamers because I started in the early 80s, probably around age 6-ish, 7, because I have an older brother who was into Dungeons and Dragons at the time. So he became my mentor, and then it spread to all our friends. Often found myself being the dungeon master. And then as time went on, explored World of Darkness when that came out, various iterations of D&D, and had always wanted to develop my own tabletop role-playing game. So now I have launched this year Alpengard, which is I've been working on since 2011. And this is the culmination of a lot of hard work and gaming experience. So yeah, excited to be here, and thank you all for having me.
That is a hefty book. Can you hold that up again?
Gets a little more intimidating when I turn it like that. So, but I do.
Whew.
I've been playing games with the Talking Crit crew and doing that as a tutorial. And
I did see some lovely tabs down the side. I could tell from the printing, so that's already a point in its favor.
Wanted to make it as user friendly as possible, but it's definitely requires some getting used to. I'll look forward to sharing more about that.
It's It's user-friendly and a home defense weapon.
That's exactly right. Yeah. It's a projectile.
All right. So I just want to greet the chat, say hello to everyone. Rio is, I think, has been the first person in chat every time, with one exception. He is the king of getting here early. Legatus is one of our mods. Fabulous individual. You know, I can never remember if this is Kadath or Kedath. I can never. I apologize. I just know him as Greg. So, um, and he is also on UK time, so he is also stretching himself to, like, you know, be here and hang out with us. So we appreciate him being here. Eraserhead is our super mod. He very frequently has links before I even know that I need them. Neon Lords RPG. I think this is a new name in the chat, and we love new names, so welcome. Delighted to have you here. And let's see. Hunter is here. Oops. My screen is jumping around on me. Hunter is here. Hunter was on the show a month ago, 6 weeks ago. I forget. We are now getting into the point where we have had enough episodes that it's hard to keep track of how. I always just say a few weeks ago, and then I'm like, oh no, that was like 3 months ago now. And I apologize, this did not pop up in time while you were talking, so I want to make sure everybody does have that. And I'm going to do the weekly plug for Jacob Ironside's GoFundMe. For those of you unfamiliar, Jacob and his parents are quite elderly. Jacob himself has some medical issues, and they have been informed that they have to move out of their home at the end of this month. With the medical issues, they can't move just anywhere, and they're on a fixed income. So his parents are both in their 70s. His mother is having to go back to work in order to, like, pay for their move. And so they need a place that's wheelchair friendly and handicapped accessible, and that's turning out to be a little bit difficult. So any help that we can give him would be great. If you have already donated or can't donate, please share so that other people can kind of spread the news and hear about what's going on. And then some other announcements. First of all, the bad news. We did not get to 100 watch hours on the last video during the week, which means that unfortunately we will not be voting on the little ram's name tonight, which is a shame because I was really looking forward to watching Eraserhead explode when everybody voted for pineapple. For the panelists, we have an ongoing debate about pineapple on pizza. So one of the names recommended for my ram was in fact pineapple. So.
Oh dear.
Eraser has very, very strong opinions on this topic. So
I saw that on a prior episode. I didn't realize it continued episode.
oh, it has
it's with us forever.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, we're on episode 18, so this has been going for 17 episodes now, at least. Big Ship has not been here to antagonize him the last couple of times, so... and Legatus apparently agrees. Pineapple does not belong on pizza. Let's see, what's the good news? Oh, the good news is that for anyone who's been following, the Real Life Fake Wizard was on the show. Also, we're just going to say a few weeks ago. He has been on a couple of times. He was in the process. I think he might have been our first person developing his own game to ever be on this show. And that was available in PDF format. It was not available in print because he said, it's really not ready yet. It's not to the point where I want to be, printing it and worried that there are typos and taking it out. So I had the honor last month of editing the entire document. That is now done. He's making the changes that I suggested, or at least whatever he chooses to make of the changes I suggested. And that document should be ready by June. So anyone who was here for that and was interested in that, I know several people were interested in getting actual physical copies. Hopefully by this fall, those will actually be a real thing. They will be real life fake textbooks or real life real, you know, game books. um, so that was very exciting. That was the first time I've done lots of editing on various things, but that was the first time I had ever gotten to edit a TTRPG. And it was great fun because there aren't a lot of editors out there that also do gaming. So, um, thank you. Have a good night. Somebody had to go make a phone call. Um, but so yeah, so that was really exciting, and I'm really looking forward to seeing the final product. And more good news, I may also be doing some work with Postmortem Studios, who has Grim Jim, who has also been on the show. Um, who apparently, rumor has it, may be putting out a second edition of his sci-fi game Machinations of the Space Princess, which is kind of a parody game and is very funny and so far is quite entertaining to edit. So, so lots of cool stuff happening in the gaming world, despite the fact that the company that shall not be named seems to not be doing well, and everybody's freaking out about whether or not tariffs are going to affect things. But um, so those are my announcements. We will be done the boring stuff and get into the cool stuff. And Nick, we are excited to have you. Tell us about your work with Dungeon Crawl Classics.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. Yeah, so Dungeon Crawl Classics, for those that are not aware, is a variant on Dungeons and Dragons. It has some key things that are different about it. There's a luck mechanic. Instead of your 6 stats, you have your standard 5 stats, and they dropped charisma and replaced it with luck. Luck is a burnable resource. You've got the ability for warriors can do mighty deeds. There's you roll to cast magic, and spells can be explosively bad or explosively good. It's a really great system. It's meant to emulate sword and sorcery uh, novels and just pulp fiction from like the 1920s to the 1970s. And so I ended up discovering Dungeon Crawl Classics a number of years ago, 2016, 2017, and I immediately fell in love. I was just getting back into RPGs, and I've tried a bunch of different systems. I tried, Call of Cthulhu, Pathfinder, 5e, um, Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, and nothing quite clicked. And then I stumbled into Dungeon Crawl Classics because of Free RPG Day. And I got the quick start guide, and I was like, this is what I want. And so I started creating stuff as soon as I'm the type of person that I get a game, and unless it's a board game where it's a very fixed set of rules, things like RPGs, it's like you want to tinker under the hood. And I started making changes right off the bat, creating my own classes and posting on the old Google Plus group that used to exist. And right around the pandemic, I was like, I'm gonna do this zine quest thing, and I'm gonna put some of my content out into the world. And as I started um, creating my first zine, Rabid Dogs, I started to, I was running a bunch of games, and I started to develop a tone that was very kind of human centric, grimdark survival horror. And I just slowly started to build on that and build on that. And then the pandemic happened, and there was, I was running, a game every week for 2 different groups, and I was just creating all this content, and so I started just putting it all out into the world. And before you knew it, I was swimming in stuff. Um, so yeah, it's Stennard, which is my setting for Dungeon Crawl Classics, is basically as I said, grimdark survival horror. I love the basic principle of you come up with a town and you come up with a dungeon and you build everything from there. And that is exactly what I've done. Originally, I was doing it for my own players, and then I started doing it for the world at large. And that's kind of the crux of it. Um, yeah. What else? What else do you want to know?
Goodness, we don't usually get to the questions quite so fast. Um, what do we have from the chat? What would you guys like to know? Uh, or Phil, I
Also,
suppose.
I'm going to take a second to shout out the Neon Lord. Neon Lord, he does his own RPG, Neon Lords of the Toxic Wasteland, and I posted in the DCC Rocks Facebook group, and then he appeared. Quick shout out to him. But
That
yeah,
is that is actually kind of awesome. So I always say that like I enjoy running kind of grim dark stuff, but I like playing lighter, somewhat psychedelic stuff. And it sounds
yeah,
like that might I'll have to take a look at that.
yeah. And that's like with my own stuff, that there is a bit of contrast because Dungeon Crawl Classics is based on these pulp novels, and there's a wide range of pulp. Some of it's really dark, and some of it is not. Because obviously Lovecraft is included in that, but then there's other pulp fiction that is very silly, and so Dungeon Crawl Classics notoriously people think of it as this being this very gonzo game, that all sorts of wild crazy stuff happens, and you're flying in a wizard van across the cosmos, and you land on a planet and other stuff happens, and I am the opposite of that. The stuff that I create is all very grounded, and it is you know that I haven't delved into undead, but if you have the feel of The Walking Dead, where it is a bunch of little groups of people, and they're all very insulated, and they want to murder each other just to make sure that they all survive. That's kind of the tone that I go for.
Um, so my husband just has the core book.
Hmm.
Um, and that looks very OSR kind of.
Yes,
So
they
the
consider
system
themselves OSR adjacent, but yes.
OSR adjacent. Okay. Um, I'm very interested to know how that works since that's more system related than it is.
Well, it's because Dungeon Crawl Classics is based on 3.0, D&D
Mhm.
3.0, and so they took D&D 3.0 and they stripped it down to nothing, and then built a sword and sorcery system on top of it. And so it has from a they're trying to emulate the feel of what it was like to play D&D in 1974. Their whole slogan is D&D like it's 1974 again, but it is a modern system. So that is how they straddle the line. Now that has become more of a common thing. A system like Shadow Dark um, is a system that uses 5e, but it also has very OSR vibes. So, um, and I, of course, because I do my own thing, I pull stuff from other systems like Shadow Dark and from Knave, and pull those into how I run Dungeon Crawl Classics, and that's part of how I build my content.
Nick, quick question. When you
Yeah.
said you were originally making content for Dungeon Crawl Classics, what did you start with? Why did you start with it? I guess would also be a paired up question. And what have you found yourself going back to time and time again? It's just like I love making classes, or like for myself, I love making items. Magic items is my like bread and butter. I'm
Mhm.
kind of interested about that because I was looking over your website and being like, oh,
Yeah. Yeah. So wow, that was a bunch of good little questions. So where do I even begin? So the thing that when I first stumbled into Dungeon Crawl Classics, I got pulled in by the art, and I was like, oh, this feels like what I am seeking. It's like I wanted to feel like I was playing D&D, like I was 8 to 12 years old again, but I didn't want to actually play BX or AD&D. I wanted something new, and this gave me that balance of those things. The thing that really hooked me, because that the Dungeon Crawl Classics rule book, it's the monster manual, the player's handbook, the DM guide two adventures, all in one book. So it's all encompassing. And the thing that I loved the most when I was reading through the book was actually the short judges section. And there were certain things about, you know, how limited the world is, that, you know, people don't travel more than 30 miles, that there's a ridiculous chart of how many leveled PCs there would be in, you know, a town of 100 or a town of 1,000. And there were little things like that that gave my brain stuff to chew on, that, like, you know, how do I make my D&D feel very small? And so that's, and one of my favorite things is that there are no goblins. It's like there are goblin adjacent things, but the idea is that the monster should be mysterious, and that tickled my brain in the way that, you know, when you're first playing D&D for the first time, and, you know, in 1981 when I was playing D&D for the first time, there wasn't, you know, decades of lore that, you know, has become part of the common vernacular. It's like if you mention a bag of holding or a gelatinous cube in conversation with people that are just, you know, gaming adjacent, they might know what you're talking about. But Dungeon Crawl Classics, they really emphasize the monster should have a name, not like, I am Nick Barron, the monster should be Rehak, or, you know, whatever. And it is the thing that has been terrorizing the town for forever. And so that way it is its own thing. And yeah, you could use the stats of, for example, a mind flayer or a dragon or a basilisk or whatever. But the idea is that the monster is, as far as the players are concerned, is none of those things. It is something that they barely understand. And that is one of the things that
Beowulf.
What was that?
So it's like Grendel from Beowulf.
Yes,
I was just thinking that.
exactly. And so yeah, that is a perfect comparison. Or anything from Lovecraft before we had images of what, you know, these different things are, these unknowable things. So that being said, those were the elements that I really like. This is what I want. I apologize, I gesticulate a lot. Sorry, I was looking at the screen. I've got the YouTube playing over here, and I see myself going, ah. But anyways, but as far as the things that I create, I started with classes, and I find classes really fun for me to work with. And originally, the first couple of classes I made, I barely understood the Dungeon Crawl Classics rules, and I made these classes because one of my players, you know, you start off in Dungeon Crawl Classics as a bunch of zero-level peasants, and the very first encounter of the first adventure I ran, and it was an adventure that I wrote, the first encounter, the herder, the shepherd, gets murked, and the herding dog survives, and the whole party rallied around the dog. And so, of course, once the dog started being super engaged in what was going on, I was like, well, of course the dog has to level up. And so then I created a canine class, which is still my most popular class. Then, you know, one of my players, they wanted to be a ranger, but one of the ethoses of Dungeon Crawl Classics is you're no hero. And when I think of a ranger, I think of a good, you know, wilderness type persona. And so I was like, I don't want that. I want it to be more like in Best of Dragon Volume 4 from the 80s, there was a bandit class. And so that was very woodsy, had some ranger abilities, had some thief abilities. And so I created the outlier class, and then it just snowballed from there. But I like to finalize the answer to your question. I like dabbling with a lot of stuff. I have ADHD. And I prefer zine format because I can run with an idea for, you know, 36 to 48 pages and then be done with it.
Yes. Yes. I appreciate that so much.
Yeah, when Phil held up his book, and I was like, "That's horrifying. I can't do that." And
Same. Amazing, but uh, incapable of doing it.
yeah, yeah, it's like when I discovered that Mothership RPG had pamphlets, I was like, "Oh, this is a great format. I can bust out one of these adventures every month." Um, and so that is the type of thing that I like to do. I like to, I'll tinker with an idea and I'll turn it into either an adventure or a class, or like this particular. I got a bunch of stuff here. This is Pay What You Want on Drive Through RPG. It is the standard character creation guide. Uh, it is very similar to the character creation in the DCC rulebook, but I themed all of the occupations to my tone, my feel. But additionally, you can start off starving and in debt. So that the reason why everybody is adventuring is because if they don't, they die. So yeah, that's I just like taking little ideas and just running with them and seeing where they go.
As I recall, you are skipping the important thing that you developed.
Which is
You developed the goat.
the goat. Yes, yes. So that is a funny story. So the canine class was so incredibly popular, which my own canine is roofing right behind me. She was snoring a minute ago, but the canine was so popular that I started getting about 2 years ago. People started posting in different groups, "When are you going to make a goat?" And I'm like, why am I going to make a goat? And I never thought to make a goat. And it's funny. I love goats. I am the first Patreon I ever joined was Goats of Anarchy. Which is a rescue based in the on the East Coast of the U.S. And so I donate money to them every single month. And but I never really thought about making a goat class. But people kept asking, and so I eventually did. And it is. I did a bunch of research to make sure that it felt like it wasn't me just projecting a bunch of nonsense. They don't eat tin cans or any of the lies about goats that I shouldn't say lies, but the myths about goats that you have. But they're really good at climbing. They're really good at jumping, and of course they are really good at running into things. So yeah, that is the goat class.
I have to get my hands on a copy of that just for the entertainment value.
Yes. You can tell me how accurate my goat portrayal is.
Well, lots of different goats are different depending on the breed, and I only raised two of them, and they're super rare, so I'm sure you didn't include them. So I think Phil had a question.
With your world building, you said you started with a town and then went out from there. So are you kind of more of a detail micro and then build from there type? Just curious about your process with that.
So yeah, no, that's a great question. So I originally this was my first adventure, The Precipice of Corruption. It just offhandedly mentioned a town called Stennard, and I had the constable and a couple of hunters that had gone missing, and that was as much of the detail of the town as I needed for that time. But then as people explored and they wanted to interact with more things, then I drew a town map, and then I came up with names for the people, and they started to develop personalities. And so the Stennard Courier Volume 1, which is a zine, it starts with a town map that is just the center of town. And I'm a big fan of control panel format. And so this is a 2-page spread that details the stats of the NPC, their motivations, personality, friends and affiliations, suspicions and enemies. if they sell something, what they sell and how much it is, but they also get a rumor table. And so that way, if a party chooses to interact with that NPC, the GM has something to guide them. The judge has something to guide them in order to direct them. I have had some groups never interact with certain NPCs, but I start real small and I just build out what I need, and occasionally I'll add somebody in order to create a dynamic where they play off each other. Every NPC hates some other NPC and is a fan of another NPC. And I'll have multiple of those. So that way, if somebody interacts with them, you can immediately have stuff that can pop off. And that's kind of my design philosophy. Eventually, I had to create a couple of other towns because people wanted to go visit other places, but they are all still within a couple of days' journey of each other, so that everything is very localized. Did that answer your question?
Very much so. Very cool. Really like you explaining your process there.
Legatus had a question in the chat. D6 is the most popular dice for games. A lot of, I think that's supposed to be RPGs, tend to use 6 different dice: D4s, D6, D8, D10, D12, D20. Does having multiple dice choices make it easier when it comes to mechanics? And DCC, I believe, has more dice than that.
14
Unfortunately, I've
dice.
lost my incoming audio. I think my
Yeah,
microphone's still working, but where can we solve it now?
I can hear you.
Everything okay, Pixel?
I don't think he can hear us.
Okay.
So, when in doubt, remove, add back in. Can you hear us now? Sounds like no. All right, you go ahead. I will work and try and fix Pixel's issue.
So let me talk about dice. So Dungeon Crawl Classics is a D20 system, but it uses something called the dice chain. And so Dungeon Crawl Classics, the dice chain is D3, D4, D5, D6, D7, D8, D10, D12, D14, D16, D20, D24, and D30. And a lot of times when people come up to me at a convention or whatever, they'll see all these dice. Even I was a little resistant when I first discovered Dungeon Crawl Classics, because that's a lot of dice, and it seemed at first kind of needless. But then as I learned and I started using the dice chain, it became how mysterious things felt when I was 8 years old. When I first saw my set of polyhedrals, I was going through that again. What's going to result in somebody using a D14? What's going to result in somebody using a D16? And how they use it in Dungeon Crawl Classics is in, let's say, D&D 5e, where you would use advantage and disadvantage. In Dungeon Crawl Classics, if I was going to let's say you had a sniper that was, or an archer that was up on a hill, and they had a perfect view of somebody standing in the wide open. I might, as a GM, be like, roll a D24 or roll a D30. And if I was having that same PC shooting at somebody that was in the rain, and there was deep fog, I might say roll a D16 or roll a D14 for that shot to hit. And it gives you a lot of room to play around with dice, both as a judge or a GM, but also as a designer. One of the things that I love as a designer is turning all the knobs. And when you think about things like, most monsters you think of as, attacking hit points. But having something that drains, constitution, or in the case of DCC, stamina. That is a dial that you can turn. And one of the dials that you can turn is you could have the PCs face, let's say, a bunch of zombies, and those zombies, because they're it's like the end of 28 days later, when the zombies are starting to like deteriorate. You could have them all attacking with D14s, and so you could have a bunch of of players or a bunch of PCs that are fighting, let's say, 30 zombies, but they're all attacking with D14s, and so the chance of them hitting is much smaller. It's a dial that you can tune, and those are the types of things that I love about dice and mechanics.
Sorry, we're busy trying to deal with the fact that EV Mux decided it hates Pixel's audio. We can hear him fine, but he can't hear us at all. So he's busy cycling through various things, attempting to find a cure. Phil, we may have to jump you in the line here. If
Okay.
yes, Eraserhead says it happens to the best of us. And
You could,
by best of us, he means him.
you could always cue Pixel with questions in the chat, and because we have a direct chat function, don't we? I don't know. I'm not used to this EV.
Yeah, we do have comments. We do have access to comments, and we do have the private chat.
Okay.
It probably is sort of awkward if he doesn't have any feedback at all, though. Though we can hear him, so
Yeah.
Let's see. I do believe that Legatus had a follow-up here. I think I saw it go by while I was trying to deal. And welcome to Blaze Reason and to Dadman Walking, who popped in for a bit.
Silence is bad.
I'm just reading through the.
Yeah, I'm reading through them as well.
Writing courses have you think about the big picture, how your world works, economy, government, religions, how magic works / limitations before specific details. Does that work best?
So
what did you do? I think it's supposed to be what that says.
Yeah. So what I did was I didn't worry about anything until somebody asked me. In fact, this is a great story in my opinion. One of the things that is like the drivers of Stennard is that there's this famine, and so everybody is starving, and that's supposed to be the drive for why people are adventuring, and why everybody is miserable to each other. And my current group, which I'm like 57 sessions in with, they had commented, because I'd never, run a group that was more than 23 sessions of DCC. And there was a point that was reached where they're like, every time we go to this old barn tavern, there's always food there. And, so suddenly I had this question that I had to answer. I had to answer, why does the old barn tavern have food? Or how do I handle this dynamic? And so since one of the things that is a principal part of Dungeon Crawl Classics is the luck stat, I came up with okay, when somebody goes into the old barn tavern, they make a luck check. They have to roll under their luck stat, and if they don't, the old barn tavern doesn't have any food. So that those types of questions get answered for me through play. I don't really think about the big picture that much, other than, I had this idea that here's this town that's starving. Why is it starving? Oh, because of this unnatural corruption. What is the source of the unnatural corruption? I ran Stennard for 6 years before even having an inclination of what was causing the corruption. That wasn't important. It's just there to be a driver. So, yeah, as I start to think about things start to develop their own personality, what have you. So like one of the neighboring towns is an anarcho-communist commune. And so there's a little bit of me thinking about, okay, what does that mean? I looked up, the pirate code for pirate ships, and boom, that was the basics of how that town operates. And then I was done.
Right. Well, thank you very much. There was a lot there.
I,
As
I,
much about as
I
much
like
about
to talk. I'm sorry.
no, no, no. It's like the fact that there was as much about like creation as the game itself is really cool. I mean, one of the reasons that I have this show is I want to encourage people who are trying to create things because I think there's, this whole attitude about, unless you're huge, you're never going to like be able to get any, authors here all the time, unless you go through a traditional publisher, you're never going to get published. And, unless you like work for the company that shall not be named, you're never actually going to be able to get anything published. And uh, I think it's really, I think it's really good to have this reminder that third party content is an option, and there are other companies that are great, and uh, you don't have to be shoehorned into writing high fantasy specific TTRPGs if that's not your thing.
Yep.
But knowing where to start is very frequently a real struggle for people. And so I think talking to people that have managed to do it, and seeing where they come from is really, really helpful.
Yeah, and real quick, I want to give a shout out to Goodman Games, the makers of Dungeon Crawl Classics, because they really foster that whole mentality. Because they started off as a company that made third party content for D&D 3.0, 3.5, and they still make content for 5e now. But when they created DCC, when fourth edition of D&D came out, they created their own game, Dungeon Crawl Classics. They fostered this whole community of zine makers, and I don't remember the exact wording of their kind of like mission statement or whatever, but they see themselves as this collection of punk rockers and weirdos and skateboarders and what have you that all love this certain type of pulp fantasy, and encourage those people to make stuff for their game. And literally their third party license, you apply for the license, you get the license, and then you send your thing that you're working on to Goodman Games, and Joseph Goodman looks at it himself and says, "This is cool," or says, "You know, this is a bit much. You might want to, limit that." Or one of the things, one of my maps in this did not have a compass rose, and he's like, you might want to add a compass rose, that sort of thing. So, but very, very engaged and fosters that community.
Okay. Yeah, like I said, I love hearing about the creation as much as I do the system, so it's all very cool. Um, okay, so we're going to do a little experiment here. I think that we can still hear Pixel. Hopefully, we're going to cue him to say something and make sure that that is still working.
Okay, so I'm a few seconds behind. We're gonna try and see if that works.
Yeah, so he's going to give his spiel with somewhat delayed sound. You do need to be a little bit louder if you can hear me at all.
Okay, so I'm going to basically. Oh, okay. 1 second. So basically, I'm listening to the stream, so I'm about 5 to 10 seconds behind. I'm going to try and monologue and then slowly lower the volume on YouTube. And then I'll put the volume back up when it comes time for questions. It's going to be one of those horrible, horrible Skype calls where everyone is like, "Oh, hey, how are you doing? Oh, I'm doing great." And then you're waiting there for like 30 seconds. Okay, so I've muted myself. I'll be looking at the chat, and I'll also be looking at private chat to answer questions. Oh yes, thank you for the nerdy background is what I've slowly collected over the years. I'm the workaround guy. As you could tell, I have somehow made this function, and it is janky and ridiculous, and that's pretty much what I've been working on the past few years. So Roll from X was a buildup of a system that some of you might have run across years ago called Roll to See If I Have Shoes On. It You can Google it and you'll be able to find it. It's a 6 rule system. The reason I love it is because I'm actually very bad at learning tabletop RPG systems. Like I love Dungeon Crawl Classics, I love D&D, I love Pathfinder, but I've never been able to sit down with a system, read the rules, and then play. And that's obviously an issue with me, but once someone has taught me a system, I can teach it almost instantly and then run it. So I definitely learned by doing, and Roll for Shoes was one of the systems that I was able to latch onto and play and teach. And I was like, this is really cool. So the core concept is incredible. Roll for Shoes was you roll a d6, and if you crit, whatever you wanted to do happens. However, you want that to happen. So if you're opening a door and you roll, the dungeon master will roll a dice based on difficulty. So the door's locked. Okay, he'll roll 2d6. So it's a d6 system. The door's locked. So he rolled 2d6. And I rolled a 5 and he rolled a 1 and a 2. So I managed to open the door. Pretty straightforward. However, if I were to crit and manage to roll a 6 on opening that door, I then gain a skill that's one level higher than what I was doing. So you start off with a skill that's try anything or do anything, level 1. So you roll 1d6. And if I open that door with a crit 6, I gain door opening, level 2. And you now have that skill permanently. And if you crit with 2 6s while opening a door, you get like a more specific but more powerful version. Rough door opening level 3, which you could use to injure an enemy or open a door and have a guard fly through. And it was a system that just lent itself to being so ridiculous that we ran it every Christmas, every holiday, but there wasn't much content online for it. So we played it, and I've built out a single module that runs someone through a 1 hour game of Roll for Shoes. And then I sat down and go, okay, I really like this. I love this system. Tear the door off the hinges. Yes, exactly. So I love the way that system allowed you to really try anything you wanted to. And I was like, okay, I love sci-fi, and I had been reading through a fantastic system called Mecha Hack, which was a sci-fi version of Black Hack. And so I started working on Roll from X, which was the same rule system, but you were in these giant robots that when they were under stress or in like combat scenarios, their mechs evolved and gained equipment, sensors, weapons that they became more specialized in over time. And so Roll from X was born. So the Roll for Shoes system of like, okay, I want to hack a computer. Okay, roll for it. You get better and better at this. But as you attempt more and more actions in the game, you realize that you can literally do anything. And so our game has kind of grown to the point where we realize that depending on your player, can I do it? Yeah, probably. Where depending on your players, it will set the tone for the game. So right now it's trying to build a system that reins in that level of possibility within a power scale. So no, I can't have you tear the planet in half at level 1, but the most powerful you could get is tearing a building in half. It's like, great. And now are they just going to do that the entire game? It's like, okay, well, let's scale it back. Let's have them be able to do that 3 times per mission, like abilities or magic artifacts in D&D. It's like, great. And so from there, we just kind of have tried to use this insane scale of game, but make it playable for more missions. I roll for world domination, says Eclectic Goat. That's exactly it. Like you want to be able to have your players have the freedom of the game, but also being able to work at a scale as they learn these new skills. So, for example, in both Roll for Mechs and in Roll for Shoes, we had 2 players discover cheese. There was a cheese factory in Roll for Mechs, and there was a cheese wheel in Roll for Shoes. as they started using it, the guy's like, wait, can I power my mech using the cheese? I was like, roll for it. And he crits. And so he gains a cheese reactor level 2. Okay, so from there, he's like, I'm going to use my cheese reactor to fire missiles. All right, he crit. So now he has cheese missile level 3, which can like goop enemies in place and do damage. It's like, all right, I'm going to use my cheese missile level 3, and a session or two later, he manages to crit with it because it gets more difficult as you're rolling more d6. And that ridiculous cheese missile became this like all encompassing like Merv missile barrage that could encompass entire sections of a city. So that's kind of what we're working on. Someone said that they're a cheese reactor in real life. So that's kind of what we're working on. I'll see if I can share a image of the main thing. So like I've always been a fan of all these sci-fi RPGs, but I think the biggest issue I've come across is that um, when you go to play a game, you don't know what the minute to minute action is going to feel like because you're just learning a system for the first time. What I really enjoyed about Roll for Shoes is the same thing I enjoyed about Dungeon World and some other games, is that it was light enough to just play, and it was heavy enough for it to get out of your way and let you play with your toys, is a great sentence for it. It's like, I have been able to teach someone this game in under 2 minutes. Is I go, okay, I'll set a scene for you, and you can roll a d6 and decide how you want to interact with the scene. So the classic one I start with is, you guys are locked in an air containment unit. What do you guys want to do? It's like, I want to punch the wall. I was like, okay, let's roll for it. And then as players get more comfortable with the system, they start to expand how they interact with it. Now, a big thing that we've run across is that we usually have to set an age setting for our games. It's like, okay, this game's PG, or this is PG-13, just so that it's like, because you can do anything, but we want to avoid having players, rush to like, oh, we're going to make adult content with this, or we're going to be really inappropriate with all of our skills. Like, no, like, you want players to have freedom, but you also want the table to be comfortable. And so a lot of the system is just, you discuss with your team, like, all right, where are we sitting at? Are we PG? Are we PG-13? I don't want you guys setting fire to a hospital. And so having that discussion and then letting the players go loose. And most of the time, it's been amazing. Like, I had players save cities, discover like amazing secrets. And there's one other old French system from like 2005 that had a mechanic that I love that we've brought into it, called Donjon. And Donjon was like a very much like dungeon crawl classic kind of game, where it was like dark and mysterious, but it had one rule where it's like, players can try to, pardon me, players can try to find something. And if they roll high enough, that thing now exists. So we had players like, is there a secret door? It's like, roll for it. I rolled a natural 20 on perception. It's like, yeah, there is a secret door. And so we've gotten to the point where the entire system works great. And I've actually taken Dungeon Crawl Classics and done speed runs. So it's really fun to just take the Roll for Shoes format and then throw systems at it. Like, let's see if I have. Oh, Pathfinder. Pathfinder writes incredible stories. I love the stories that Pathfinder writes, and they're so well put together. But I always have such a hard time with the system that I'll take the story and just throw it into Roll for Shoes, or I'll take Starfinder and throw it into Roll for Mechs. And we've been able to just play through it very, very quickly because the skills scale very quickly. But I love being able to do that with a system. And if any of you have played Dungeon World, Dungeon World is another game that we've been able to just grab the Pathfinder rule books and stories and gone, okay, like, let's jump into it. So I'm going to stop monologuing for a little bit. I'm going to put the volume back up on YouTube and see if you guys have any questions.
Awkward silence.
We have the awkward quiet.
Hey, Pixel, with the evolving robots nature of the role for mechs, is it weird to be looking at the extremely rapid technological like evolution in our world with artificial intelligence and things like that, and say, this is actually kind of what some of my players are doing, or what you'd intended for the game, starting to mimic reality?
Ooh, interesting. So
We
like
wait for the 10-second delay.
skills reacting as our world does to like technology moving along too fast. I would say it is dependent entirely on the player, mostly because like our world, like I grew up in the 80s and 90s, and tech has moved along so quickly that you watching things go from 0 to 100 really fast almost seems like it would have informed my gameplay. But I find it's uh, what's what I was talking about earlier is like you never know how an RPG is going to play until you're playing it. Like, oh, I have this book, but how does it actually play? So it's not so much as these robots evolving is matching like, oh, AI is like coming in and doing all this stuff. It's more there's more of a sense of discovery to it. Whereas I think if I did push a game that had that like rapid movement of AI, I'd almost want to build more of a sense of dread into it, where there can be a part of your robot that over time, this thing is growing bigger and becoming more a part of your system. And as you use these skills, you start ticking off a box that your mech is getting infected. And so let's say you hit 10 infection points. That means that once per mission, the GM takes control of your robot and makes it perform an action and like, attacks some of your enemies. And you can do that in Roll for Mechs. All you need to do is add a little meter in the corner, and it's just like, this is an infection meter. Once, if you guys are using powerful skills more often than we're allowing during the session, so let's say you get 3 uses of your break a building in half. It's like, I want to use a fourth. It's like, okay, mark infection. So I think there is room for that in the system, but it's not technically built with that idea originally in mind. But what's really fun with that with this is that you can throw a lot at it, but the GM needs to be capable of like catching it and then throwing it back, right? So if you're a GM that can really think on your feet, that can really come up with these like insane scenarios, like you've just given me an infection meter. I could put that as an extra little section in the game. But in terms of was it built with the idea that tech moves along too fast? Not originally. And then we're going to have the awkward silence again as I bring the audio back up. Okay. There actually are some messages that I will read out before we have people jumping back in. I know when DMs have to convert systems, it takes a lot of time and effort. It sounds like yours is easy. Is that so? It is. Okay, yeah. So basically, how it works is players aren't given a level of skill and enemies aren't given a level of difficulty. The GM is slowly building up the dice all the way to like 5. So obviously, early levels, you're going to discover a lot of skills. Like you're rolling a 6, you're rolling a 6. But to get to a level 3 skill, you need to roll 2 sixes, which is much, much more difficult. So players will tend to plateau at level 3 and 4 skills, with some of them very rarely having a level 5 skill, which means that as a GM, I know exactly what the range is going to be in terms of a system difficulty. Because the last boss in a Pathfinder game, I know players will only be rolling 4 or 5 dice. And so, if the big thing that I run into is that you can very, very quickly add or reduce dice when you see players attempting something difficult or when players are doing something really well. So my best example is okay, these guys have damaged the armor of this creature. He's been rolling 4 dice. I'm going to drop that down to a 3, or I'm going to give him a -2. And that's very easy to carry over. I don't need to look through a rule book to know that it's now easier to hit him. Or if a player is using an ability that makes so much sense, like a player has had all this hacking gear with them, and they're like, okay, we've cleared out the monsters, we know we have an hour, can I set up all this hacking gear? It's like, yeah, give yourself an extra 2 dice and give yourself a +1 to all of your rolls. So whenever you think of a story in terms of like Pathfinder, they'll always have all of these moments, these plot points that players will try and go through, and usually there's a goal in mind. So it's like, oh, we're in the library, we need to find this hidden book. Players in the roll for shoes and the roll for mech system will always eventually get there despite the shenanigans in the way, because there's so many skills that they can apply to that situation. Yeah, so it's less of a conversion and more of writing down what your plot points are and writing down a general difficulty for that area. So have I had players hit a brick wall? Not always, but there have been some shenanigans where they've moved to somewhere faster than I wanted them to get there. And it's like, okay, do I want them to be able to tackle this now, or do I want to put the fear in them? And it's like, yeah, this creature is rolling 5 dice, and the portal opens up and is dragging you back into it. And they're like, oh, I'm going to roll to dodge the portal. I rolled a 5. Okay, I rolled a 21, and this portal sends you off to somewhere. So yeah, it is a extremely malleable system, but it is dependent on the GM being able to play yes and no but with their players to a good degree.
And the fact that it's easy to pick up is really kind of nice.
Oh, roll for shoes sounds similar to how I write stories. If I wanted to write something, I would roll to see if it worked or not. Natty, that's actually really cool. If you're ever stuck writing a story, you would roll and you'd be like, okay, the hero is gonna like climb this mountain. And it's like, I roll 6. It's like, okay, I had a great time. It's like I roll a 1. Oof, that's gonna be a rough day. Okay, so I'm gonna drop my audio back down, and then we're gonna have some awkward silence, and then I'll check for more messages. Or if you guys want me to go into parts that I haven't explained yet, because I've kind of been monologuing without being able to hear, so there's not a lot of that back and forth.
Can you
You might see
provide
me
an
gesticulate a lot. I was like, yeah, I'm French. Hello.
Can you provide maybe an example of maybe what's the most fun scenario you've run through with your players?
Hmm. Okay, most fun scenario that I've run through my players. Okay, so we had 2. I'm gonna do one moment from our Roll for Shoes game, and then one mission from our Roll for Mech. So Roll for Shoes, the moment that was the greatest is they were stuck inside a city in a tall tower, and they were in a prison full of rats, on a dirty mattress, and one player did not want to leave the room and just kept on rolling to see if they could catch the rats, if they could use the mattress. And I think 4 or 5 crits in a row led to them making a hot air balloon out of the rats in the mattress. They then found some gunpowder, set the whole thing, and they crit again, and the entire group managed to escape the city that was under siege on this hot air balloon off into the sunset. And I called it there. I was like, we can't get any better than this. This is the most ridiculous escape I've ever seen in my life. And then the other one was a classic, like Godzilla kaiju was like coming towards the city. And so we did what Dungeon World allows you to do, where you have fronts, where every time players do certain things, the enemies will act. And you also offer your player the choices of scenario. So it's like, okay, are you guys coming in from like an underground bunker with your mechs, or are you guys coming in torpedoing from the sky? And they're like, okay, we're coming from the sky on like this giant dropship. I was like, great, roll for it. And we had two players roll horribly, and so they went careening off so far into the distance, where they were in a jungle desperately trying to get to the city to defend the all of the power plants. And you had one player just like on the battlements, taking on all these hits as creatures were crawling through. He's like, guys, I could use some help. And it led to these wonderful moments of them like bursting onto the scene as his mech is like getting heavily damaged, and just, you know, blazing through and getting this clutch moment where these two creatures crit, and these two players had the skills where they crit with both of their dice and managed to dodge out of the way, both of them working in concert and just obliterating this creature that was, I think, seconds away from taking out a power station. And there was just cheers and laughter at the table. And it was just such a great moment of watching these players just have fun. Like, half of them had never played a tabletop RPG before, and they just instantly caught on to like, okay, we're going to have some fun with this, and realizing the weight of their roles, and then watching them just go like, yeah, we got it. Like, last second, let's go. And it was, that's when I really knew that like people would enjoy the system and just be able to use it to learn RPGs like I had. And I wasn't sure about that up until that point. And so it was really nice to just see people like, I want a laser that fires out of my robot that makes people look fancier. I was like, okay, what's the point of that? It's like, well, you know how like suits are really constricting sometimes? I want them to get suddenly fancier and fancier to the point where they can't move. I was like, all right, let's go for it. And just these silly moments that really have people laughing so hard at the table, and really just, again, the system gets out of the way and just lets you play with it. So that was a big one for me. We're gonna go into the getting the audio back up. It's not the best method, but we're making it work. Let's see what else I've got. Oh, okay. Natty had an excellent question. Okay, so the system needs both a good GM that can think quickly and players who are willing to push the boundaries of what is possible. That's actually really interesting. So I would say that the system gets elevated when you have both, but the system allows you to have neither. So I could sit here, for example, and I've got my Pathfinder book, and I'm just going to read through the story. And if the players go off book, it's like, okay, I this isn't in like the written adventure, so you guys can go there if you want to, but there's not much to do. So in terms of being able to follow a story, I think you can do it without a good GM. And I think that if players are just doing basic things like, oh, I'm going to fight, oh, I'm going to go and try and, pardon me, buy some equipment, they can do that. I don't think that the system punishes you for not being able to think outside the box. I've had players who are definitely not as creative jump into it and just do very basic things. And I'll offer suggestions on like how their skills can grow. It's like, oh, your robot has rocket boosters. Do you want to try and do some like combat style stuff instead of like, you've been doing a lot of traveling, but do you want to like get like a rocket punch, or do you want to, you know, be able to jump 100 feet into the air and come down like a giant like iron rod to attack things? And so I think that if your GM isn't able to grasp those moments, the game still functions. It just functions at a more even keeled method, like you would see in other RPGs. Like there would be, I think it's easier to for there to be hijinks, and it's easier for things to be boring. So the system can swing in two directions very quickly. Okay. Good second question. Is it strictly for shenanigans, or have you experienced some surprisingly somber or serious moments? I have had some moments that we've built in terms of like we've added story moments from old Pathfinder moments where like people from their past have showed up in game, and that really is dependent on the players. I think if you do the session zero with your players that we have in the book, where it's like, all right, do you guys want this to be a more serious game or do you want it to be a more silly game? If you set the tone early on, you can definitely have some great story moments. I'm a very silly GM, and so I haven't really had those more serious moments. I'll be very honest. It's definitely there, so you can definitely have it be. It's like, hey, we're gonna play this straight laced. Here's we're gonna play a lower powered game, and we're gonna try and stick to like telling a serious story about like what do these pilots go through when they're put in the middle of this war, facing all these terrors, and how do they overcome that? That's definitely a story that you can tell. And then oftentimes for my own games, I revel in the laughs and the silliness and the way that people are like, hey, let's go and combine our mechs together into a giant tank, and we're gonna go just see if we can run over the kaiju. It's like, all right, go for it. And oh, right, biggest thing. We're offering the game for free, including its final version. Whenever I do get it published, like a PDF of the final version will be free for anyone who playtests it. Because my original skill set is in building escape rooms, where I had a lot of live testers, and so I could sit there and watch them. Again, what I was talking about earlier is like watch the flow of a game. I have a lot of board games, and I never know how those board games are going to play until I sit down and play it. And sometimes, like, this board game has a great concept, but playing it is awful. Like, it is so not natural to try and make all these clunky pieces work. And so, for an escape room, the thing I've always pushed for is like, okay, I want people to be able to start and play through it, and maybe they'll have some stumps along the way, but I want this to be a great flowing experience. So right now we're offering the game for free to anyone who wants to play test the game. I'd say 90% of the game is there. It's just not very well edited because I'm not a very good editor and I want all the content to be there. And I'm especially looking for recorded sessions where I can see, okay, where are players running into issues? And I've been able to in the past work out those issues, but I need to see that game flow first. So I think I'll end that there because this like me be able to listen to myself to answer those questions is rather tough. So I'll leave the floor to Phil for his game. And yeah, thank you for all the questions.
Thank you very much. We adapted and overcame there as best we could. I think that was fairly reasonable. Phil,
Yes.
last but not least.
All right. Well, thanks again for having me on. This is Alpengard. Yes, the spine really is that thick, but don't let that make you scared. It's a great game. I'm classifying it as stark fantasy, kind of high fantasy or low fantasy, but it takes a gritty look at real life. And one of the things I emphasize is fantastical realism. And so, obviously, this is a fantasy game in a kind of pseudo medieval setting, but it's also meant to connect enough to reality that you feel like you really are taking part in, say, a combat scenario or a social scenario, and you feel invested in the game. So, as I mentioned earlier, I always wanted to design my own tabletop role playing game. And so I decided to base mine on the D30. And Nick, I know you mentioned that D30s are one of the dice used in the DCC system, but mine uses the normal 7 dice set that you're familiar with from so many RPGs, like D4, D6, D8, 2D10s, D12, and then also you have the D30 thrown in. So that's your primary task die. And the other facet, kind of a unique core facet of this, is a concept called Numa. So If you look at the just that symbol in the center there, that symbolizes pneuma, and that is an energy pool that will let you do. And pneuma is the Greek word for spirit or wind. It's where we get words like pneumatic. And so this energy pool will let you do quite a few different things, whether it's upgrading your rolls or fueling your powers. Powers may cost 0 pneuma, in which case you can use them at will, or they may cost 1 or more pneuma. And everybody has a fixed pneuma pool at the beginning of each day. And so it's a resource that you really have to manage carefully, because as soon as you run out of pneuma, that means you can do less. So it definitely weakens you once you drain that pool. So I've watched players over the years start to get very, very careful. And sometimes, as my friend Jesse, he coined it a pneuma dump, which is where you just blow all your pneuma as quickly as possible just to see how much damage you can inflict and how well you can do, regardless of the consequences, because you may be mid-adventure. But it's definitely fun to watch people manage it. One of the things you can do with pneuma is, as I mentioned, you start with the D30. So that is, for the core mechanic, your standard roll. However, so that's a variable range of 1 to 30. However, you can also burn a pneuma to upgrade to an improved roll, whether it's for a strike, accuracy, trying to hit an opponent with your attack, or if you're in a social situation, or you're using a skill such as toil, which is the athletic skill to climb a cliff. An improved starts with a base of 10, and then you roll a d20 and add it on to that 10, and you'll still add some mods. So Alpengard is a D30 roll high system. And if you burn that 1 pneuma on an improved roll, what that just did is it pushed you to the top 2/3 statistically of that 1 through 30 variable range that represents the randomness of life. Meanwhile, your modifiers, your fixed mods, those represent effectively your skill level. And if you're high enough level, you can burn 2 pneuma on an advanced roll, in which case you start with a fixed base of 20 and you instead roll a d10 and add that, and then add your mods. So if you're high enough to execute that advanced roll, you've just conceivably pushed yourself in the top 1/3 of execution statistically. So you picture, hey, you're Navy SEAL, you're great scientist, whoever this is, or in the Alpengard terms, you're great warrior, you're great wizard, whoever it is. If you're a high enough level, you have a fixed modifier that represents your skill level, that even when you're tired, like you're low or almost out of pneuma, you still have a very high modifier that you're adding to your rolls that's reflective of your skills that don't go away even when you're tired. But hey, even the greatest warrior, artist, whomever can get fatigued. And if you're stuck rolling standard because you're out of pneuma, you're going to start rolling 1s, you're going to start rolling 3s, you're going to start rolling low. And whereas if you have enough pneuma left and you can burn on the improved or the advanced rolls, then you could have a guaranteed success depending on what your target number is. So I wanted to build a game that gave that fantastical realism such that you could relate to your characters and really think it through. So Alpengard is about putting your thinking cap on and really enjoying the process of the adventure. And it offers multiple unique elements. For example, in most of the RPGs I've played, if you want to play an intelligent character, oftentimes that determines your class, your calling in life. You know, we're all familiar with Dungeons and Dragons. If you want to play Sherlock Holmes, wizard. There you go. There's your option. Well, wait a minute. Shouldn't an intelligent fighter be every bit as dangerous as a quick or strong fighter? So what I've done is in Alpengard is I have a set of 5 root traits, which are your ability scores, and there are definitely different callings that focus on those root traits, but there are hacks and there are workarounds. So if you want to play a charismatic druid who's the life of a party, you can. And you can, if you want to play a wizard who maybe isn't the sharpest nail in the can, but is very, very wise or even quick, you can do that and find a way to make that work, and you're still every bit as combat effective. And what that does is it expands. I saw the comment there on the side about ROLE playing versus ROLL playing. This character flexibility allows you to tailor your root traits, your ability scores, to the personality of the character that you want. over time, so that if you want to play a really intelligent character, it makes sense with how you're stacking your root traits. Another unique aspect is what I call magical entwinement. If you have, and what that means is that magic and magic objects, items, in order to make them work, you have to entwine them to your soul. So there's a magic inherent in you and in the object itself. And you can empower them by entwining them to yourself at increasing ranks. And so what that does is it allows the magic object to grow with you throughout your career. So if you've had your favorite magic ring, magic cloak, sword, wand, whatever it is, since the beginning of your career, you don't have to ditch it halfway through just because you found a better magic wand, per se. You can empower that at increasingly higher levels, and there's only so many entwinement rank slots you have in your pool. But that way, for example, if you're playing a samurai who came from a family with an amazing katana that was handed down to you, you can eventually empower that at the apex level. And it's not as if your great ancestral sword became obsolete early in your career. So those things will grow with you. And your life skills, all of them become important. I think I saw Talking Crit join the chat crew here. And to recharge your Numa each day, it assumes if you go to sleep, it assumes you have full nutrition if you want to fully recharge, nutrition and hydration. But if you're starving or you're dehydrated, well, you might not get all your Numa back in the morning. Well, that's where the cook life skill comes into play, because let's say you've run out of food, and it creates interesting role-playing situations, such as, let's say you are, on an adventure and you just killed a demon. Can you eat it? Could you conceivably, in a desperate survival situation, do something with its blood to get some hydration out of the situation? And so we've had characters who've deliberately stacked, and by your life skills, they can have standard, improved, and advanced roles. So I know Taylor's character in Talking Crit, he just deliberately gave himself improved cook and recently cooked some ogre kebabs for the party because they were short on food and they needed some nutrition. And it was, well, we killed an ogre. What are we going to do with it? Time to make use out of it. So it creates those fun role-playing scenarios that, yeah, exactly. Like, got his dinner. What are we eating? It may depend on what the game master has thrown at you. So with Alpengard, you start with a choice of 5 folks, which are your ancestries, your races, your heritages, some of which are familiar, some of which are less familiar. So you have and they all tend to have Old English flair to the name. So your elves, those are similar to classic fantasy elves. Your dwergs, those are similar to classic dwarves and hobbits. And you have your fauns, which are kind of like satyrs. Then you have your orcs, who are more half orc, half goblin, but definitely carnivorous and strong and aggressive. Then you have your shalks. And shalk is just an Old English word meaning could be a man, a sailor, whatever, but in Alpengard purposes, it just means any human. So those will be one of the 5 folks for your character. And you have your 5 calls. First of which is Assaulter. And that's your warrior, and you could build anything from a heavily armored knight to a rogue to a skirmisher, whatever you want, anything in between. And then you have your druids, who are, and by the way, all 4 of my magic wielding calls, they are all considered clerics in this system, representing the divine or the beyond in one form or another. And so the druids are more your nature loving clerics. And next you have your exarchs, who are more reverential, and they believe in an unseen world. And so they wield powers against invisible spirits and things like that, whereas the druids are better against fairies and giants. And then you have your monks, who are kind of a cross between a Shaolin monk and a swame. And so they can fight hand to hand, but they also have magic. And then you have your wizards, and they wield elemental magic. So each type of cleric wields its own magical flow and has powers that reflect that. But all 4 types of clerics can heal. So that way, regardless, as long as you have one person playing a magic wielder in the party, a cleric, effectively, you can have a healer. And that just freed people up to explore their role-playing possibilities and still keep the party durable. Although in Alpengard, healing is much more difficult than it is in a lot of other games in the same genre. You may have, if you want to invoke a healing power, you have to have what's called a Kindler, which is probably going to be a potion or an inscription, or it was a oh, and no, that was not a hypothetical example, Goat. That was, I literally threw that ogre kebab situation into a really. It was important. They were out in a situation where they were out of food. But yeah, if you want to play a healer, you can. I had a buddy who played a wizard. He said, no, healing is immoral for wizards. So he deliberately did not take the healing power, but you can build your characters how you want. And there are different paths under each call. And the idea is that you can build picture personalities that you like. So it definitely takes some time to learn the game, but once the game master is familiar with the system, the GM can really help people have fun. And my YouTube channel contains episodes of us playing, and so you can watch those if you'd like and get a feel for it. And in addition to the rule book, which Pixel, as you noted, you can see the markings that show the chapters on the pages, but it also includes, in addition to all the rules, in the back you have a nice fully developed world of the Stone Mirrors. And you can't quite see the map that well, but I have a copy of it on my website. But I just focused on a small region in the map of the world. And
your map is beautiful. Your your website is too. I've taken a look at it, and it's quite lovely.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So I know there are quite a few rabbit trails we could go down there, but like Nick and Pixel, I'd be glad to throw things open for people who want to ask questions.
I have possibly a two-part question.
Yeah.
Are there fairy in your world?
Yes, there are.
Are they proper? Are they proper fae?
Proper fae. So if you're looking for things that reflect classical fairies, then I'd say yes, there are. You may need to clarify that question.
Mischievous, troublemaking, very powerful, not tiny, flittery, Disney-esque things.
Yes,
never make a deal with one. Never take food from one.
Yes. So what I did was I built into the system rivalries among the monsters and rivalries with the monsters and the 5 mortal folks, so that everybody is resentful, picturing from a monstrous point of view, whether it's titans or dragons or fiends or even archons. They're kind of resentful of mortal folks and their abilities because pound for pound, mortals are typically not as strong as the monsters, and yet for some reason they have these strange giftings that seem to allow them to overcome their opponents, and including fairies. Fairies tend to be mischievous, and I have some that are nicer than others, but generally speaking, when you run into one, probably not the most trustworthy individual, but it may be extremely persuasive. Did I cover your question there? Or do you?
That makes me very happy because I love the old fae, almost horror stories instead of fairy tales. We call them fairy tales, and we forget that most of those fairy tales have really grotesque.
The Grimm brothers are case in point, right? When you read the actual stories, it's just Rumpelstiltskin. I mean, when the lady calls his name, he really rips himself in half. I mean, that's it's not this cute little sanitized story. So yes,
I have a quick question.
Sure, Pixel.
I got my audio back up to only a second of delay. We're great.
Sweet. All right.
Could I see a photo of the character sheet? That's the part that I love the most.
Okay. So it's available on my website. If you go to the Friends tab on the top and then scroll down, there are pre-generated characters on there. But just above the pre-gen characters, there are also, you can get this. So I know it's not the best view right here, but I'm not as tech savvy as you are. Putting the cool image you put up there earlier. Yes, you can absolutely download a rewritable PDF off the website if you want to build
Oh,
your
that's
own character.
fantastic. Okay.
And there's also a kind of a how-to manual and how to read it, just a little quick one-page quick start guide. And uh, definitely the tools are there. And in honor of Justin Timberlake, I'm bringing the crunchy back. There are definitely some seriously crunchy aspects to Alpengard, primarily how to build your characters, but that's because I wanted to offer the customization such that every character contributes something of value to the party. Nobody feels overshadowed. It is balanced. You know, if you, one of my longtime play testers, longest time, a friend of mine named Justin, he just said excuse me, Jared, said he really appreciated how nobody outshone the others in Alpengard. Everybody was effective, but it wasn't as if there was a runaway horse. So that you could have your specialty and feel like, oh, I have a part to play, but I'm also dependent on the rest of the PC party. So that as you customize your character, it fits your capabilities and your personality. You can go into as much depth as you want.
Fantastic. Thank you for that.
No, absolutely.
That was very old school gaming too, was that yes, wizards were not very powerful in the beginning, but you kept the wizards safe in the beginning because by the time you hit level 5 or 10, fighters alone were never going to be able to take on some of the things you ran up against. So now the wizards would be protecting you.
Yeah, and it's the way I structured it was I kind of went with a 5-point system. Okay, assaulters are the best in a one-on-one fight, maximum individual damage. If we're just getting down to the nitty gritty in the metagaming, and the wizards do the most aggregate damage. So it'll be less harm inflicted per target, but a greater amount with the wizards. And the druids are just above that, say in 4th place on aggregate for harm and or 2nd place in aggregate harm and 4th place in dealing individual harm. So that way everybody has a role to play. And yeah, there is a protect the wizard element, but it's not as much. I mean, a party of assaulters could be just fine and just don't have any clerical backup. It's totally doable. It'll
Well,
become. Oh, go ahead.
I meant more in the working together and everybody having a role.
Yeah. Oh,
Because
yes. Yeah.
nowadays, one of the things I don't like about a lot of the larger modern games is that it seems like everyone does everything. It's just what you're wearing for an outfit is more than anything else.
Yeah, no, this is definitely a system where everyone has a specialty. Even among the assaulters, someone could be, heavily armored. Oh, in Alpengard, armor does not make you harder to hit; it makes you harder to hurt.
Which makes
So,
far more sense.
yeah, that's what I thought. So, yeah, it effectively gives you harm resistance against impact, and it may even slow you down if you're wearing too heavy of armor and make you easier to hit. But usually, the benefit of wearing plate armor is going to be worth it. But again, there's realism. There are stances. I also wanted to create a system where if you have an image in your head, oftentimes I would love to play a warrior, say, with a big flail, the big spiky balls. But maybe another weapon is more statistically expedient for me to take. So in Alpengard, I just stuck weapons into categories so that, hey, if I'm playing a warrior with a great weapon, it doesn't matter whether I pick up the big axe or the big sword or hammer. It'll all function at the same level, just in a particular stance, so that you can create that mental image that you wanted without sacrificing combat effectiveness. And that way you can pursue the fun.
So Natty says, in video games, I like to be more of a support, buff everyone else up and heal them when they need it, make as many people as tanky as possible, and then bravely, I think this is supposed to be, and then bravely run away. Is that an option?
Absolutely. Yeah, you could do that. The Exarch call, the 5 calls, those are your callings. You'll see I spell it Kall in the book. It's the Exarch would probably lend itself the most to that, but you can absolutely do that primarily with any of the 4 cleric calls. You could pull that off with a druid, a monk, or a wizard as well. But the Exarch is the best healer in the game and can play that supporting role, but is also still very effective. And I made sure that also each type of cleric has types of opponents against which it is best. So your wizards, may be the best at handling primals and titans, and the monk is the best against creatures of, I'm sorry, primals and dragons, whereas the monk is great against creatures of the natural world. So it's beasts and plants and titans and chimeras.
That elephant never saw it coming.
That's exactly right. Or the elephant doesn't exist. And so that's why I was able to destroy it. So I bring in the philosophies and wanted to present them in a respectful way and allow people to really think through worldviews and how this would apply in a fantasy world as well as in the real world. So yes, thank you. Bravely bold Sir Robin, bravely running away. So yeah, if you want to have a chicken on your shield, you can do that. I have a buddy who played a coward deliberately and just a warrior who fought with a crossbow. And every time a fight started, he would scream and run away, but then he always justified it as taking up tactical position so that he could get as far away as possible and then shoot with a crossbow. So you can still have a great character in the party that way.
Sometimes I find the characters that have flaws like that are really far more fun to play than just this is the most tactically, numbers heavy person that I could play.
Sure.
I like that for GURPS and for the Final Fantasy RPG. They had a codified way of doing disadvantages and advantages. So I love being able to bake that into a character. It's like you're weak, and that makes it interesting seeing you overcome it, as opposed to you being powerful and overcoming difficulties.
Absolutely.
Well,
Okay.
Oh, I was going to say, so the original old school D&D was you rolled 3d6 and you assigned them in order to your stats. So if you'd wanted to play a fighter and you ended up with a 12 in strength, you could still play a fighter. You were just going to be a fighter that struggled more than somebody that naturally was really tough. And I really found that far more interesting to play than somebody that rolled an 18 and just bulldozed their way through everything.
For sure. And in Alpengard, there are constant trade-offs with the root trait scores. Everything has stats tied to it. And Glint, which is my equivalent of charisma, and yes, I agree, Legatus, that giving your character personality makes playing with friends a lot more fun. If you want to pump Glint, that's tied to your Pneuma. So whereas charisma is often the forgotten ability score, it could be, possibly the most important one in Alpengard. But the reality is, I have a buddy who, when we were playtesting, we took their characters from the beginning all the way to the end, and he never put a point into his Glint score because you get a point to assign wherever you want at every level, and you can stack it as you wish. And he still had enough Pneuma at the end of the game, and he played it to the max, played himself as someone with a not so endearing personality who kind of rubbed people the wrong way, have a 0 Glint score. But it's totally doable because you're gaining in other areas if you're not putting your point in one place. And another quick thing, you'll notice Alpengard, when you go on to the pre-generated characters, the pre-forged heroines and heroes on the website, that they start at level 4. And I wanted to build a world, speaking of the fantastical realism, where even the weakest person can make a difference, and even the strongest, most powerful character is still vulnerable. So levels 1 through 3, that really represents childhood, and even just basically the earliest you could possibly be a combatant. And if you want to start there, you can. And if the game master wants to do that, but really, by the time you're 4th level, that's kind of your young adult. And then the power curve as you go through that, even at 30th level, you're strong, but you're still vulnerable. You're not bending reality. If you want to climb a mountain, you get to climb the mountain, and you get to put all your life skills to use. You're not going to take some handy magical, I love those games where there are cool teleport spells. It brings in a new dynamic. But Alpengard, I wanted to kind of bring it down a notch and have less powerful magic, so that you really do have to use your mountaineering skills. And again, I kind of felt like that prevented things from being overshadowed. So if somebody has been stacking her character so that she can use the trick skill to pick locks brilliantly, if there was a power that just instantly picked locks, she would be thinking, my gosh, why did I bother stacking this skill and get advanced trick by the time I'm 28th level and someone can just burn one Numa and boom, it's open and the lock's picked with no danger versus
Oh,
no, you need that specialist who can really sit there and picking the lock while the dragon is charging down at you, and it makes a material difference.
Phil, what's the level cap on your system?
So 30. So it goes from
Okay,
1 to 30.
nice.
And yeah, and I threw in chapter 3 a little tidbit of, hey, if you want to advance it beyond 30, go for it. You can, some suggested ways to do that if you really want a mega powered campaign. But yes, typically it's capped at 30, and uh, you're very powerful, but you are by no means invincible. And you still have things to worry about.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
My brother was saying that recently that he had been playing in a campaign, and he said it was driving him a little bit crazy because he said he felt like it was, um, oh, we're level 1. Here are bad guys with a moderate, who are moderately dangerous. Well, now we're level 5, so now here are different monsters that are moderately dangerous. Well, now
Right.
we're level 10, so now here are different monsters that are moderately dangerous. And
Right.
he said it really got kind of monotonous, and felt unrealistic in that, once they passed a certain level, they never encountered, those lower level characters again, and they never were at risk of endangering something that they couldn't handle as long as they were remotely careful. Does that get dealt with at all? I mean, most of the games I run, there's always a very good chance you're going to run into something you can't beat, and you have to be smart enough to run away. But
Yeah, and that comes down to, I think, the game master jumping in. You probably from the beginning, go ahead and towards the front end, throw your players up against something they cannot beat to teach them that it's okay to bravely run away like brave Sir Robin, and to put that in their minds. But yes, I didn't want the game so that millions of people at 0 level are statistically irrelevant because one high-powered wizard could kill them all in a heartbeat. No. Is Bruce Lee exceedingly dangerous? Yes, but all people have to watch their backs. So this is something where, yeah, the game master can take more powerful monsters, throw it up against the PCs, teach them that, hey, you're going to have to think this through. And especially in a dungeon crawl situation, if the PCs are not managing their Numa well, and hey, you know what? You can punish them for it. Throw them up, they thought, oh yeah, I'm going to pull the Numa dump and up against this creature that I assume is the boss monster. Well, sorry, wrong guess. You blew all your Numa, and you cannot upgrade your rolls. Most of your powers you cannot fuel. There are small upgrades that cost Numa. You can't do that. You're basically down to your bare bones. So that's a good way of teaching them a lesson. And yeah, don't just let them run off and sleep and recover their Numa. No, if they've burned through it, you can't sleep 5 times a day and eat a bunch of food and say, yay, I've recharged. It's no, congratulations. This would be like fighting in the battlefield for a real soldier, where, if you're completely exhausted, you're going to have to find a way to genuinely rest to recover.
yeah, that newer rule that has snuck into everything, I'm not crazy about either. But okay, we're going to make this the last question because I want everyone to be able to have time to plug their stuff. Again, if you have questions in the Discord, everybody please go there and get them answered if you think of anything tomorrow. Natty says, are there kobolds in the game and are they playable?
So the closest thing to a kobold would be your orc. So there are different kindreds, which are ethnicities, effectively heritages of orc. And yeah, there is one that's more scaly and greenish. So you could definitely play a kobold-esque character, but it's again, these are orcs are more kind of like half goblins, half orcs, half kobolds, so a little more human. I wanted to kind of bring them down to where, yes, they're still a very aggressive folk, but they're not just the quintessential bad guys. So evil can wear the mask of beauty. In fact, that's when it's at its deadliest. So an extremely good-looking elf could, in fact, be the villain, and a okay, yeah, right on. If that's good enough for you, cool. But wanted to, yeah, make sure we you definitely have a lot of character flexibility. You want a character with horns on your head? Go fawn, because you can have bull horns, antlers, knock yourself out. None. Good way
I
to
I,
go.
I thought for sure you were going to make a goat joke there.
You know what? There are goat-like fawns, and you would get a kick out of them for sure.
All right. Well, thank you very much for everyone for coming tonight, both the chat and the panelists. I want to give everyone time to plug their stuff. So if everyone wants to go around one final time, tell us what's going on with you, where you're going to be, if you're at events, if you have a video dropping, if you have a convention, if you have a book coming out, all the things. Nick, we will start with you.
All right, very good. So, for anybody that is interested in knowing more about Dungeon Crawl Classics, I have a YouTube channel. It's just my name, Nick Barron, Breaker Press Games. You can find me on YouTube. I do videos breaking down all the different things to do with the rules, and I also use it as a way to keep people updated with all the stuff that I'm working on. Because of goat-related things, anyone that is interested in the goat class, you can get this on Drive Through RPG or through my web store.
Woohoo!
And yeah, I have a ton of stuff that is available. I've got over 30 releases at this point, so there's a lot of stuff to choose from. You can find me on Drive Through RPG, itch.io, my own web store, Goodman Games, and Exalted Funeral. But Exalted Funeral is on a purchasing freeze, so a bunch of my stuff is out of stock, and they can't reorder it right now. But yeah, lots of stuff that you can find. And then I will be at MomoCon in Atlanta at the end of this month. I will be at Origins running the Goodman Games booth. I will be at Gen Con and a bunch of small cons in between. So
I'm beginning to feel like everyone's going to Origins but me. um, I did want to ask: is your stuff print on demand? Is it just PDF form?
so
Physical media is important to a lot of us. So
yes, no, I am a very physical person, and so all of my stuff is available in print. I print locally. One of my whole principles is that I want to print everything or manufacture everything within 100 miles of my house.
nice.
I will end up, when I eventually do a hardcover, I will go a little bit further so that I can print in Missouri. But yeah, that is part of my shtick. And I thankfully, when I talked to my printer, uh, apparently Wisconsin. I'm based in Milwaukee. Wisconsin is a big paper state, and so all the paper that my stuff is printed on is all manufactured in Wisconsin. So tariffs should not affect my stuff. So
That's awesome. Yeah, there's been a lot of concern about that, but more and more I'm finding out that there are a lot of small creators and a lot of small companies it's actually not going to. So like Troll Lord Games, I guess, like owns their own printing press, and you're doing stuff locally, and that's really great. I love supporting creators in any way I can, but uh, creators who also can do things locally are even better. So, all right, Pixel.
Heyo. Yeah, thank you very much for having us on. That was fantastic.
Sorry
Hopefully
about
I'll
the
be able to
technical
come back.
issues.
So I did figure it out. If you have anyone else who has issues, my Discord was open at the same time, and it was hijacking my audio to listen to Discord first. So there you go. That's a potential fix, hopefully, for the future.
Huh.
I finally got it, but who knows? There's 1,000 things that can go wrong and 1,000 things that can go well. So for myself, I won't be going to Origins or any cons for a while. I have a lot of things in the pipeline, but mostly just busy writing. You can find me on Discord or just look up Pixel Patch or Pixel Patches on YouTube and Instagram, and that's where you'll see a lot of stuff. I actually work as a physical mini game developer for a larger YouTube channel, and that's my kind of day to day, which will be most of the content. But sprinkled in there, we're hoping to start a live podcast for Roll for Mechs, which is going to be called Masters of the Mechaverse. So it gives people a literal 5-minute intro that once you watch it, you should be able to pick up the game and play it, which is what my big hope for the system is. And I am absolutely, even if you're listening to this 5 months down the line, please message me, looking for a blind playtesting group. So I want to be able to give this rule book to someone who's never played it before and have them record a game so that I can see, okay, this is exactly how their game flow is going. They might be playing this similar to how I do it, and they might be playing this different. But what are the sticking points? What is something that is stopping a player from picking up this light system and using it? And I'm going to iron those out and tackle it with a vengeance. And then hopefully once everything's organized, I'm going to be getting it in this nice little booklet in the same style as Mecha Hack, which I really love. And I'm currently building enough artwork to get their style of incredible and like evocative art put into a booklet. Even the dog loves it. It's amazing.
I was gonna say even the dog, even the dog is.
So hopefully it'll be, so obviously a PDF of it will always be available on drive-thru and itch.io once I get that fully rendered. But I do want to move to physical booklets so that it's a system that people are like, hey, I want to spend 2 or 3 days playing with some mechs. And then last but not least, the Roll for Shoes Prison module is an expanded version of the 6 rule Roll for Shoes system. That's on drive-thru RPG, and it's free. You can also donate 50 cents if you want to, but it's there, and it's 8 pages, and it gives you a really, really good idea of how the system plays. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
So there is actually a section on the Eclectic Herd Discord too that is for people looking for playtesters.
I will be there.
I was going to say you can post that there, and if anyone is not yet on the Discord or has not yet checked out I know there are several games looking for playtesters, so hey, free games. Feel free to connect and play the things that you enjoy playing. And it sounds like there were several people really interested in this. So,
one thing for Eraserhead, if you remove the HTTP and do a triple W, your hyperlinks are turning into an emoji halfway through. It might turn into a proper hyperlink without the HTTP. Not 100% sure though.
Yeah, we get lots of like weird little robot things on. Happens all the time. Yes, and here is the Discord for anyone who might not yet be signed up. All right, and again, last but not least.
All right, yeah, thank you. So, Alpengard Tales and Adventures is the core rulebook. It's available on both Amazon and on drive-thru RPG. This encompasses everything needed for game masters and players to play the game. And also, I have, while I'm working on the monster book, which will be the sequel, Creatures and Origins, I'm making prototype monsters available for free. So if you go to alpengard.com and then click on the Foes tab along the top, and then you scroll down, you're going to find a bunch of, they aren't pretty, they're just Word documents that have been saved as PDFs, but you can find a great variety of monsters so you can play the game. So there's already a ton there. And yeah, the ebook is also available on Amazon, and it's the ebook that's on drive-thru RPG, and that's on sale for $5 right now. Whereas the hard copy, this is a paperback, is more. And I would have had a hardback out, but unfortunately Amazon had a slight little 0.25 inch formatting requirement that threw off the book. So working on the hardback, that'll be coming down the road, hopefully by mid-June.
But there is a physical copy that's
Yes,
available.
it's paperback. So really nice. This is the paperback. And but if you're one of those who wants to look for the hardback, that'll hopefully be here in a month.
Nice.
Yeah. And then I have a YouTube channel, Instagram, Facebook, and yeah, and then the website. So, and
So you have everything but Discord.
correct. You know what? I do have a Discord channel, but I met so many cool people like Goat and the Eclectic Herd and Talking Crit and so many cool people that I figured, you know what, it's better for me just to be on there and and help support them and enjoy getting to know them. So Goat, shout out to you. Thank you for this.
Oh, you're very welcome.
Yeah.
All right. I want to thank everyone for coming tonight. I do not have anything to plug really. I did all my announcements early on. Once again, make sure that if you have not checked out Jacob Ironside's GoFundMe, please do that. Like I said, if you can't donate or have already donated, please make sure. Yes, thanks, Legatus. Please make sure that you forward it if you're capable. We're hoping to at least get him to the point where, moving is even possible. So, and we're kind of coming down to the wire. I think he's only got like 3 weeks before he has to move at this point. So, I want to thank everyone for coming tonight. I am still working on my history of zombie movies. You're very welcome, Nick. I'm still working on my history of zombie movies video. I am sincerely hoping that will be out in time to. I am not going to compete with all of the bigger boys when 28 years later comes out. Instead, you can watch the history of all the movies that led to that movie. So, hopefully, I will have that done. It's been a bit of a struggle because work picked up very quickly, but that's also a good problem to have. So, everyone have a wonderful night, and we will see you hopefully here next week. Happy headbutting.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Meet me at the tavern, have a drink or two. I'm the eclectic goat, and I'm here to gab with you. We'll talk about immersion, adventure, heavy lows, characters and story, warlocks and barbarians and bards, comedy or horror. We got inspiration if you're in need of it, or just need to hang out somewhere cozy. We're the guys for you, we've got time for you. Come and join the crew, here's what to do. Meet us at the tavern, have a drink or two. I'm the eclectic goat, and I'm here to play with you. We'll discuss the theory and the mechanics, how we ask for crits, Dungeons and Dragons and Wizards. Meet us at the tavern, have a drink or two. I'm the eclectic goat, and I'm here to play with you. We'll discuss the theory and the mechanics, how we ask for crits, Dungeons and Dragons and Wizards.